In this video, we go over all of the forwards in the Fantasy Premier League game and list them on whether or not they need to be part of your Fantasy Premier League season or not. Which players are serious options and which should we avoid? All of that coming up next. What the flock is going on, and welcome to FPL Today YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining me, and today we are going to, on Tier Maker, rate all the forwards in the Fantasy Premier League game. Now, first off, credit where it is due. This has been made by FPL Mate. Now, if you want to go and check out his video, it will be top link in the description down below, so do feel free to go check that out. I've thought about doing it myself before, and now it's nice and easy for me to do. So we're going ahead with this, but do go check out his video as well. But anyway, we are going to rate all these players, and we are starting off with three £8 million strikers. We're starting off with Teemo Verna from Chelsea. Now, Chelsea are currently in flux at the moment. So if I was going to rate Teemo Verna as far as nailed on, with the likes of Raheem Sterling and Rafinha potentially joining, I'm not sure what his position in that club is. Also, Teemo Verna has been terrible in front of goal for the majority of his time in the Premier League, though there has been small patches where he has been decent. But I think Teemo Verna, for me, kind of has to go in a void just because of how much he can be an infuriating asset to own. So we're putting him in a void for now. We might change this as we go through some of the players. We then got Dominic Calvitt-Lewin, and let's be fair to Dominic Calvitt-Lewin, there was a period, maybe 2 seasons ago, where he was a serious contender and asset for one of your main striker spots in the Fantasy Premier League. And at 8 million, if Everton can find some form, I think he could be all right. But the problem is injury concerns are a big thing with Dominic Calvitt-Lewin. 8 million's a bit steep for me with how he played last season. Not that he played much. So I think he's definitely above Teemo Verna as an option. And I suppose if Everton have good fixtures with Richarlison gone now, Dominic Calvitt-Lewin could be the main man. We're going to put him in fancy at a punt. But we do that reluctantly. It was almost, if necessary, C grade. Then we got Roberto Firmino, and I think that has to be an avoid as well, with Darwin Núñez having joined and Salah signing a new contract and Luis Diaz just joining. I don't think he's going to be one of the main 3 strikers. So injury otherwise, maybe he would become, if necessary, or fancy a punt. But to be honest, I feel like Firmino's time has passed him by. So we got 2 in a void already. Next up is Miquel Antonio, and to be fair, he has had some very good periods in the Fantasy Premier League and is part of a West Ham side that do seem to be improving generally. However, again, injury concerns is always a problem with Miquel Antonio, and to be fair, I think there's potentially better options this season, but he's one of those players that you need to be ready to jump on. And I think if he's on form, he could be fixture dependent. I don't think I can put him in A though, so we'll put him in B for fancy a punt, but we'll put him before Miquel Antonio, and I think Teemo Verna for now goes before Roberto Firmino. We then got Patrick Bamford, very injury prone last season, didn't really play much, but the season before was a very valuable asset, but that was when he was at a much cheaper price. I'm interested to see what happens with Jesse Marsch's Leeds, but right now I feel like at 7.5, he's probably still a better option than Teemo and Roberto Firmino. So we're going to put him in C if necessary. And then Callum Wilson, I think you could almost say very similar things about Miquel Antonio, Dominic Calvitt-Lewin, Patrick Bamford and Callum Wilson. So I think Callum Wilson goes above Bamford just because of the amount of goals he scored last season despite injuries. So we got another one in the B tier, fancy a punt. Then we got 2 Aston Villa boys, Ollie Watkins and Danny Ings. Now, Ollie Watkins, I've never really been on a run of his form, like owned him as a player when he's gone on some really good form. But I think he has to kind of be around the fancy a punt mark as well. And then Danny Ings, off of history, probably would join him. But at Aston Villa, he didn't really lift up any trees, did he? So I'm going to put him in if necessary. We then got Arsenal's Eddie Nketiah, and to be fair, 7 million really isn't the best price, especially when Gabriel Jesus is at 8. Gabriel Jesus, of course, has just joined Arsenal, so I kind of feel like Nketiah has been affected by that. I think he is a good option, and I definitely enjoyed owning him last season for periods of the season, I guess if he's nailed on, he'd go in fancy a punt. But to be honest, definitely better options there. We seem to like the middle ground for a lot of these players. We need to put some lower. Tony, though, I think could be fixtures dependent. And the reason for that is he definitely finished last season strongly. And if Brentford can continue to grow as a side in the Premier League, I do like Tony as an option. I like what Brentford are doing, and I'm hopeful that Brentford could be a mainstay of the league for a couple of seasons now. And I think Tony is definitely a player that has gotten used to the Premier League. So Tony is the first to go into fixtures dependent. Then we have Erling Harland. And now I would love to be a bit more pessimistic with Erling Harland, but the fact that 60% of players in the Fantasy Premier League own Erling Harland is a serious thing we need to think about, because if he does hit the ground running, then Erling Harland could seriously hurt your rank. On the other side, and the flip side of that, is if he doesn't do very well and you pick someone else, then you are going to be laughing, because you've basically got a differential in a striker because you've gone somewhere other than Erling Harland, and so many people have gone with him. But his pedigree from Bundesliga, and that doesn't always convert well to the Premier League, but as a player in general, considered one of the future stars of the game, probably already is one of the stars of the game, I think at Man City he's got to be considered a serious option. We then got Raul Jimenez from Wolves, and Raul Jimenez, again, player that has had times in the Fantasy Premier League where he's been a very important player. I think if he's returned to fitness completely, could I put him in fixtures dependent? I think Wolves need to be better going forward though, so I think I might downgrade him, but I do really like Raul Jimenez as an option. And I think at that price tag, he has to go above Nketiah. I think he has to go above Watkins and Wilson and Dominic Calvitt-Lewin. So we're going to put him just behind Antonio, even though he is £0.5 million cheaper. We then got Mitrovic, and to be honest, I've struggled with Mitrovic in seasons gone by. I don't want to risk it again. Fulham, unless they do something drastic, maybe Mitrovic can be put into fancy a punt in the future, but he scores lots of goals in the Championship and he doesn't do it in the Premier League. So Mitrovic for me, especially at 6.5 million, straight into the avoid. Then got Neil Mopay. If you know about me, you know I'm not a particular fan of Neil Mopay. I think if you have to have him, maybe he could go in necessary. I think if I'm being fair, he would probably be at that price tag, if necessary option, but not a fan of Neil Mopay. And I think potentially there's a better Brighton striker to take a punt on. We then got Dominic Solanke, and I think until I see more from him, he's got to be in a void as well. If Bournemouth look like they're going to do well this season, this could change, but I don't think Dominic Solanke is a viable option at the moment. We've then got Mbeumo, who looked like he could be amazing last season, but then kind of tailed off. So I think he is a if necessary. I can't put him with the likes of fancy a punt, but he's definitely above Neil Mopay. Let's make that clear. Next up, we have Leicester City's Daka at 6 million. With Vardy around and Iheanacho, I think I'm going to put him above the avoids. If he's playing and you're taking a punt on Leicester, 6 million isn't too bad a price, so we're going to put him there. And then we've got the pair of Nottingham Forest strikers, Awoniyi, hopefully I've got that right, and Brennan Johnson. I think Forest strikers, for me, at the start of the season, have to be an avoid for now. At 6 million especially, when you could get for 6 million Daka and Mbeumo, I just think you're either going for a bench striker or someone a bit more expensive here. We then got Chris Wood, who has got some Premier League pedigree, can do the job, but I feel like he maybe was a stopgap for Newcastle. So if he was playing, if Callum Wilson was out and Newcastle looked like they're creating a lot of chances, I suppose he could be in fancy a punt, but I would put him below all of these other strikers. And then Dennis Undave, a lot of people are high on this guy. He had an amazing goal-scoring record in the Belgian league. I think fancy a punt is decent for this guy, maybe even fixtures dependent, but this is, of course, not knowing exactly what kind of entity he will be in the Premier League. I would probably put him above Wood, but that's probably it amongst those strikers he's amongst. But the fact that he's 5.5 is very helpful for us FPL managers. We then got Harry Kane, and I think Harry Kane is always a serious option. Of course, there have been seasons when he's not started that well in the Premier League, but often that is because of lots of international football. That isn't necessarily the case this time. So I think if I'm putting Erling Harland there, someone like Harry Kane at Antonio Conte's Spurs has to be a serious option for us, no matter how much we may want other players. We then got the Crystal Palace strikers in Mateta and Edouard. Now, I like Crystal Palace. The problem with these two is game time. I think there's going to be rotation issues, so I think the price is great at 5.5, but I believe they are if necessary. If one of them is out and the other becomes more nailed on, I think we could be thinking of these as fancy a punt, but for now it's if necessary. Ronaldo, if he stays at Man United, I think could be a great shout still. It does depend how Man United start the season, how they are performing. Do we want to take a risk with him? Is he a serious option? I don't think he quite makes it with the likes of Erling Harland and Harry Kane. I think those are the top two options. The issue I have is I don't think he's fixture dependent, because I think if Man United are playing well and Ronaldo's leading the line, he's not fixture dependent. So I think I have to put him in serious option, but it is behind Erling Harland and Harry Kane. As for Jamie Vardy, it used to be a straight bang into a serious option. I think he's getting on a bit in age. I'm not sure if he's going to keep up with the other three in the S tier. But actually, I'm going to put him in fixtures dependent, but I could see why people would put him in serious option. And Darwin Núñez, I think, also goes here. Probably, without knowing that much about how he'll perform in the Premier League, I'll probably leave him there. Because, don't get me wrong, a Liverpool striker is not a bad option at all. However, the likelihood is you've got Mohamed Salah and you've got Trent Alexander-Arnold. If you're going for 3 Liverpool players, Robertson could be argued to be just as good an option as Darwin Núñez or Diogo Jota. Diogo Jota being at 9 million and me worrying about his game time now with Núñez, Diaz and Salah, I think drops down to fancy a punt. But because of his goal scoring record, I think he has to be at the top there. Don't get me wrong, if someone is out or we can see that Diogo Jota is nailed on, he scores goals, he gets in the box, he gets lots of opportunities. Is it fair to put Darwin Núñez above him with his goal-scoring record, though, in the Premier League? I'm not sure it is, so maybe Darwin Núñez needs to be down to fancy a punt as well. That's one I'm a bit torn between, because Diogo Jota has proven himself at Liverpool. Darwin Núñez is a new entity who does come with a good goal-scoring record from the Portuguese league, and is probably going to be leading the line for Liverpool. But I haven't seen enough of Núñez, and I don't know Jota's playtime, so they're both going to stay in fancy a punt. And then finally, we've got the last 3. We have Richarlison, who has moved to Spurs. Now, if you've been a fan of my channel for a while, you know me and Richarlison don't really get on. Whenever I brought him in, he never does very good for me, and he always does something good enough to make me fancy bringing him in just to suffer. I think Richarlison at Spurs, is he nailed on? Kulusevski, Kane and Son did very well as a free last season. I think Richarlison could affect the amount of minutes the likes of Kane and Son get, so I think there might be more rotation up front. I think Richarlison could be a fixture dependent, depending on his game time, but I can't put him above Jota, so he's going to go down to fancy a punt. Then we have Gabriel Jesus, and I actually think Gabriel Jesus potentially is a serious option. But at a new club, not having been the main man leading a line for very long at Man City, maybe it's fixtures dependent, because at the start of the season, I feel like he's a very good option. He's a serious option at the start of the season because his first 6 game weeks are good. However, I don't really rate him as far as consistency enough to go up here in the top 3. But I think he's probably the best fixture dependent option out there. So I think he should go above Vardy. And he's very close to serious option. And then finally, Kai Havertz, who definitely can't be put in the same bracket as Teemo Verna. So if he's involved in the Chelsea front 3 or however they line up, I think Kai Havertz is definitely fancy a punt. He's probably up there with the likes of Jota and Richarlison as well. So guys, that is my tier list, and it looks very middle heavy, which I suppose should be expected. And then of course it is bottom heavy compared to top. We've only really gone for 3 strikers as serious options and 3 as fixture dependent. Although if it fits your budget, I'd argue that Jesus and Tony could be serious options because of their price tag. So maybe we could move them up and then move some of these up as well. Might make it look a little bit more legitimate, because if we take price into account, I think they're serious options. And I think in that case, fixture dependent wise, you could probably argue that these players are all good options. And some of these in the fancier punt tier are probably good options too, to be fair. Antonio is nailed on if he is fit. Jimenez, again, we're looking back at the past to see how good he used to be. So I think I actually prefer it like that. So we have changed it up a bit. That is the final tier list. I'm not going to tinker with it anymore. Do feel free to go and check this out yourself. It was created by FPL Mate, so you can go and have a crack at this yourself. Maybe share it on Twitter. My Twitter is @JNO_FPL if you want to share it with me there. And maybe, if enough of you share it with me on Twitter, we can do a video going over your tier lists as well. With that being said, thank you very much for tuning into this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. It's been something a little bit different. And if you have, make sure to say so in the comments and hit that like button. We can do midfielders next. With all that being said, I've been JNO. This has been FPL Today. And remember, it's all about the game.